Hello, everyone, and welcome to another live episode of TEDXcellence, the ongoing series that I use to attempt to keep my sanity while I'm locked away in my Corona bunker here on the moon. Yes, I've decided that for all intents and purposes, I am on the moon in my moon base in Crater Valley, along with my pet dog cat fox. And this is where I would play some kind of animal sound of a dog and a cat and a fox mixed together if I actually had a soundboard. But I don't, so I can't. But that aside, hello everyone. Thank you for coming out this morning, this lovely Saturday morning in the midst of our collective quarantine. I hope you are all safe and well. If you're not well, please get well soon. Say hello to some of you who have showed up to greet me on this wonderful day. Tall person, hello. Reason Vision, hello. Asian Hippie, hello. W.R. Costin, hello. T.A., hello. Who's next on the list here? Havoc Vladimirovich Stalinov, hello. Attack Alpaca, hello. Nothing for you here, hello. Hearst Gravegear, hello. Pink Hollow the Driving Ape Man, hello. Cypher, hello. Gulf City Cult of Krill is not here. Bruni, hello. Officer Buck, hello. Moonshock, hello. Joys of Sorrow, hello. Everybody's lining up. John Smith, hello. All right. TC, hello. What we have today is a presentation apparently going to tell us how to eliminate gender bias in our workplaces. Now, as always, I haven't actually watched this, so I don't know what it's going to present us. Maybe it'll be something interesting. Maybe it won't. Maybe it'll be informative. Maybe it'll be boring. We'll find out together. However, if past is prologue, and I have watched a few of these over the last couple of years, I have some predictions of things that will be mentioned. Okay, maybe I should have like a bingo board or something out like this, like a donut operator has. But so things I imagine will be mentioned in this, and I'll be very surprised if I'm wrong about any of these. One is the number of female CEOs in Fortune 500 companies, the pay gap, studies from McKinsey and Company. They like to use those quite a bit. And what else? The examples of the number of female executives in boardrooms. That kind of goes along with the whole Fortune 500 thing, but also someone talking over or interrupting a woman, men's propensity to interrupt women, men's propensity to take a woman's idea, restate it later, and get credit for it. And probably also something about women being relegated to menial tasks in the office place. Something like that. Those rough list. I'll be very surprised if none of them are there. But I imagine we'll hear one or more of those over the course of this. All right, so one more round of hellos. Sorry, Jim, hello. Donator, hello. And I think that's everybody who's said hello so far. Reminder, guys, for this or any other future streams, I will be tweeting out links ahead of time. Please do retweet and share these. I'm getting multiple reports from subscribers that they never hear about these things until the next day. They don't get any notification. It's not even listed. They have to go to the channel directly if they're to see it. And even then, they don't know to go there. So it is incumbent upon everybody, for either myself or anyone else that you like on YouTube, to retweet stuff that you like, because it seems as though nobody's getting notified about these things, live or otherwise. So please do. And if you do retweet it, if you can, and remember to, please do tag me in your retweet so that I know you did it, so I can say thank you, because I do appreciate it when you guys do that. And sometimes I don't see the retweets when they go out. Okay, all that is preamble. All that aside, per usual, I'll be starting off the first couple seconds to make sure I get a sound test on this from you guys. So you tell me if you hear this, and then after that, we will continue.
A few years ago, I had a corporate feminist dream job.
Okay, a corporate feminist dream job. This is already very promising. You guys hear that? Let me know if you heard that. Fairly Becca, hello. Somnambulation, hello. Tackle Pegasus here at Fine. Becca Fairley says all good. All right, guys. So a feminist corporate dream job she got. I am waiting with bated breath.
Launching a company's national initiative to recruit more female employees in the finance sector.
A national initiative to recruit more female employees. So practicing gender discrimination in your hiring practices. Okay, got it.
But first, I had to get the signed-off support of all department heads. So I spent months perfecting the proposal, presented it, and won the support of almost everyone.
Was the percentage that didn't support it male by any chance?
But in this team, there were two men we'll call Howard and Tom.
Uh-huh. Were Howard and Tom male and all the others were female? Or I'm just curious.
Howard just would not get back to me. I emailed him about the proposal. I left him voicemails. I'd roll my chair back and forth during meetings, trying to make eye contact with Howard. He'd just take out his phone and start scrolling. And then I started to question myself. Had I been diplomatic enough in that email? Too demanding in that voicemail? Does Howard hate this proposal? Or am I just overreacting?
Why don't you talk to Howard directly? Maybe he lost the email. Maybe it got lost in the flux of things. Maybe it was marked as spam. Why don't you speak to Howard instead of like giving him meaningful looks? Are you only relying on email for your communication with your coworkers? I don't know. It just sounds a little odd.
It's probably just me, I thought. And then one day, I'm walking down the hall, and here comes Howard. He's holding a packet of papers, sees me, and lights up. He says, "Sarah, Tom just emailed this to me. You should take a look. It's a proposal for us to recruit more women."
Oh boy, there's number one. Okay, it wasn't in the boardroom, but it was someone taking someone's idea, a woman's idea, and taking credit for it themselves. Oh boy, I'm already on a roll, guys.
I think Tom is a really great idea here, and we should all get behind it. Howard proceeds to hand my own proposal back to me and explains to me the many merits of what I wrote.
Oh, mansplaining. Oh. Bets on the odds that this actually happened, the way that she's saying it. Because I'm not so sure. And also, again, why didn't you just talk to him directly about this? Ask him if he got your email about the proposal. Why sit back and hope that the email did all of the work for you? That doesn't make any sense to me. Especially if you're like right in front of him, wheeling around in your chair and looking in his eyes. It's bizarre. Thank you. This is Kyle. Hello, chat people and scribbles. Hello, this is Kyle. Hope you're having a good day. Thank you for joining me.
Howard was never against recruiting more women, but he needed to hear from a man why it was important to hire more women.
Why didn't you speak to Howard directly? But why didn't you talk to him? Did you get my email, Howard, about the new women's initiative? That's all it would have taken. Why didn't you do that?
And as this scene played out, I said nothing.
Well, whose fault is that?
Because I knew somehow that I was a guest in a place that wasn't meant for me.
Okay. Thank you, Manic. It's Dogcat Fox. Dogcat Fox, my pet here on the moon, in my moon base, safe away from Corona, so far as I know. So you're projecting onto the rest of the office or the culture of the office that you don't belong there. Did you ever go talk to Tom? Did you ever speak to him about taking credit for your idea, or, I don't know, changing all of the labels and everything else on the documents you must have prepared for this proposal for him to put his name on them? That seems like a little bit of professional malfeasance and something that someone could be punished for, since all of the other department heads had already approved your proposal and they would already know what your proposal looked like. So why wouldn't Tom get into trouble for that? Why would you stay silent about that? Very curious.
And so instead of questioning my environment, I questioned myself. I wanted to know how so many talented women who worked long hours and started their careers with confidence all became trained in this kind of self-doubt that makes them say, it's probably just me.
That sounds like a you problem. If you had spoken to Howard directly, if you had spoken up when Howard presented your proposal back to you, maybe things would have changed. Maybe things would be different. But you assumed the worst of the people around you. You assumed the worst of yourself. And there's a commonality in all of those. You. Thank you, Officer Buck. Sounds like she'd be one of those wives that wouldn't tell her husband why he's in trouble. She'd just expect him to know from her clues. Yeah, and that's why. Oh, that was the other thing I wanted to predict. And since we haven't gotten far into this, I'm not cheating yet or anything. We're going to be shown statistics that are in the realm of the God of the gaps theory of analysis. As in, she will show us a disparity statistically between one thing and another, and just allow the audience to assume that the cause of this disparity is, I'm going to predict for the sake of this talk, sexism or gender bias, without actually proving it, right? Like, men do this much X and women do this much Y, or receive this much Y, therefore sexism, while ignoring any other possible explanations. I imagine we're going to get something like that in here too.
How is that still possible? Aren't things getting better? Opportunities for women have increased over the last 50 years.
Is she saying women or woman? Because it sounds like she's saying woman every time she's meaning the plural. Maybe just a pronunciation thing, but it bugs my brain.
But over the last decade, progress has stalled. Experts have previously identified 2059 as the year the wage gap would close.
Wage gap. There we go. Wage gap, guys. I'm on a roll. That's 2 so far.
But in September of this year, these same experts announced that according to the most current data, we'll have to adjust our expectations to the year 2119.
Oh my God. That almost sounds unbelievable. I mean, the only way to fix this sooner is if women just give up having children and raising a family. By the way, the wage gap is not a paid gap, it's an earned gap. They never seem to clarify this. Usually they say how much men earn, and if they use the magic word earn, that puts a whole different shine on the issue. We'll see if she does that.
101 years from now. Looking beyond the wage gap, women are still underrepresented in leadership, receive less access to senior leaders, and are leaving the fastest growing sectors, such as tech, at 45% higher rates than men, citing culture as the primary reason. So what have we been doing to address gender inequality? Why isn't it working?
Yeah, that's a good question, because this initiative to get more women involved in STEM or into higher places in companies and so on has been going on for decades. And yet nothing seems to be changing insofar as you would prefer. It's almost like people continue making similar decisions as their forebears about how they want to live their lives. Now, I've never understood sort of the, there aren't enough executive women or not executive whatever. Like, how many people actually want to be an executive? I mean, I understand there are people that do, The people that become that, they run their own businesses or they're seeking a higher office or whatever else, that kind of thing. But for me personally, if I can make a living and not have the added stress of being a super duper executive, that's more ideal for me. And I think most people, not everybody, but I think most people fall into a range of, I just want to be able to make a living and have a life elsewise, not be burdened down by some high pressure job. Some people perform well under pressure. Some people hate pressure. Some people find themselves in situations of pressure. But I think most of us, if we could just get by, that wasn't Corona, I swear, and not have to worry about high pressure jobs, we would do that. Anyway, that's a bit of an aside. Let's continue.
Many businesses think they're addressing the problem because they provide training. $8 billion worth of training a year, according to studies from the Harvard Business Review.
$8 billion, Harvard Business Review, okay, of diversity training. What is the goal of diversity training? I mean, is it to teach people to accept other people? Is that it? And okay, all right, I'll just assume for a second, $8 billion and it's quote unquote not working. All right, so throwing money at the problem, amazingly enough, does not improve the numbers you're looking for. Okay.
These same studies also conclude that these trainings don't work and often backfire. Research tracking the hiring and promotion practices of 830 companies over the course of 30 years found that white men who are asked to go to diversity trainings tend to rebel by hiring and promoting fewer women and fewer minorities.
Okay, so white men are racist and sexist inherently. So they're specifically not hiring people on the basis of their gender and or their race or ethnicity. That's called a crime. If you have evidence of a crime, call the authorities. And I'm very curious to know how they know these supposed evil white men are making those decisions on the basis of those factors. That they are specifically trying to rebel against the training to, I don't know, piss people off. How do you know that?
The other solution has been to ask women to change their own behavior, to lean in, to sit at the table, negotiate as often as men, and get more training.
Yeah, like, I don't know, talk to Howard directly or speak up when someone tries to take credit for something you did. Stand up for yourself.
Women currently earn the majority of college degrees.
In what subjects? I always hear that, but I always have to ask, in what subjects?
Outperform their peers in key leadership skills and are running businesses that outperform the competition. It doesn't look like education or skills or business acumen are the problem.
Okay, so what is the problem? Even though I have a feeling I already know what the problem is.
We're already empowered, enough to make an impact on the businesses that are ready.
But
these approaches fail to address the key systemic problem, unconscious bias.
Oh my God, get out dramatic squirrel, dun, 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 unconscious bias. So women are skilled, women are successful, women earn more college degrees, women are completely capable, women are empowered, and yet somehow, some way, they can't overcome unconscious bias. Now, is that unconscious bias possessed by the people around them? Or is that possessed by individual women, like our speaker, who chooses to rely on email rather than direct communication, who chooses to remain silent under the belief that she just doesn't belong there? Was it her bias that was driving her problems in her main example, by any chance?
Thank you.
Okay, guys, unconscious bias, that alone is an applause line.
We all have bias. It's okay.
No, it's not okay. You just told us it's not okay. You just told us it's keeping women down. It's not okay. Why would you say it's okay?
It's lodged in our amygdala. It keeps ticking away when we go to work. Bias affects how much I like you, what I believe you're capable of, and even how much space I think you take up. Thanks in part to the Me Too movement, awareness of gender bias has spread.
Thanks in part to the Me Too movement. Awareness of gender bias or crippling fear over gender interaction? I mean, I suppose it could be both.
But the harassment stories that made headlines are just one piece. You don't have to harass a woman to limit her career. The messages women send me aren't about being harassed. They're being tolerated.
Not harassed, they're being tolerated. Again, I'm still curious to find out how these examples she's speaking of are able to read the minds of people and know their motivations. Thank you, Officer Buck. Quote, "We all have bias, but only your bias is bad," unquote. I always wonder about that. It's like, it's okay, guys, we all have bias. It's just that some of you are thinking wrongly and you don't even know it.
In the workplace, but they're not being valued. I don't know anyone who's ever said, you know what I love about my employer? They just tolerate me so well. I feel so tolerated.
Yeah, because most people don't think that way about themselves. Are you receiving a paycheck for what you're doing? Then you are valued. If you want more pay, you have to ask for it. I don't know what you expect to receive from an employer beyond that.
To break the inertia, we need to take a step beyond Me Too, beyond just being tolerated as women. Our organization decided to tackle the problem in 2 ways.
Your organization. What's your organization? Oh, did she mention that at the beginning? Maybe I missed it. No, she didn't. Okay.
First, if we're all biased, our workplaces need to be actively anti-bias by design, not by trying to change mindsets one training at a time.
Okay, so social conformity, anti-bias. So you're going into workplaces with an assumption that the wrong kind of bias exists, because obviously we all have bias, and this needs to be corrected, specifically in favor of one gender over another. Do I have that right?
So our team began by identifying over 100 cultural levers that can be adjusted to counter the impact of bias.
Thank you, No Room for Squares. It is Mr. Pear giving me a big cup of cranberry juice or blood. Looks awfully reddish to me. I don't know, but thank you. I'm actually drinking orange juice right now because, keep my vitamin C going, guys.
We found that small tweaks can lead to big changes, and they cost a lot less than $8 billion. So what do these small tweaks look like?
Oh boy, are we going to get a list? Because, I love lists.
If a woman is asked to state her gender before filling out a job application or performing a skills-related test, she performs worse than if she were not asked first.
That would be a incredibly thin psyche for women to possess then. Like, fill out this form. Are you male or female? Oh no, I'm female. I can't do anything. Are you kidding me? Really? Okay. proceeding through your version of reality. All right.
So how can businesses avoid activating this self-stereotyping bias?
Well, I don't know. I mean, if the entire purpose of this initiative is to get more women into your workplace, then you have to identify them, and presumably they have to identify themselves as female to qualify or to fill out your quotas or whatever. So why wouldn't you want to differentiate between male candidates for a job and female candidates for a job? Did I miss something?
Move the gender checkbox to the end of the application.
What does that have to do with anything? Whether it's at the beginning or the end, wouldn't answering it at the end of the application actually bring it closer in time to the point at which they actually have to perform or do something? I mean, maybe between the top of the form and the bottom of the form, they'll forget about having to answer the question of whether or not they're female, and their psyche will be healed. You want to bring it Sorry, okay.
Example 2. In a national survey that we conducted, men were 50% more likely to state they had received multiple frequent evaluations over the course of the last year, as opposed to one single yearly review.
Is that a lie? Okay. Sorry, I must be missing something. I mean, either they have or they haven't.
Here's why this matters. Fortune magazine reviewed performance evals across industries and found that criticism like this, related to personality, but not job-related skills, appeared in 71 of the 94 yearly reviews received by women.
Wait, personality, not job-related skills. I thought you were complaining about the culture. Isn't personal interaction, diplomacy, like you even mentioned yourself, part of being an effective worker in a group? Isn't personality and the ability to, find common ground with other people a job-related skill? Maybe I'm missing something as compared to what you've already told us about your own experience.
Of the 83 reviews received by men, personality criticism showed up twice. But in businesses that conduct much shorter, highly frequent reviews, say 5-minute weekly evaluations focused on specific projects, the personality criticism vanishes.
Okay, and I know this is going to sound bad. Maybe, I don't know. So men are criticized on their personality far, far less than women are criticized on their personality. Could this be, and I'm just throwing this out there, could this be that on average, men are far more stoic in personality in the workplace than women are? That if you're talking about behavior and interaction with other coworkers and things like that, that quote unquote personality or emotional outbursts or tone or whatever else you mentioned, they might be brought up less with men because men, on average, retain more control over such things in a professional environment. I know, I'm horrible for asking that question, but I'm just curious.
And the perceived performance gap between men and women is nearly non-existent. While yearly reviews rely on overall impressions, which are like petri dishes for bias, short, objectively focused evaluations eliminate this feelings-based gray area.
Okay, but can you not at least allow for the possibility that the very graph you just showed actually just tells us what we already know, that men and women are different? Why is the results of that, statistic or whatever automatically mean that women are being unfairly assessed? This is the God of the gaps theory of statistical analysis I was talking about. Here's a disparity. So obviously the reason for this disparity is sexism. Just so you know, and I don't have to prove it. I just have to show you that there's a disparity.
Now, some businesses are consciously taking these steps to counter the impact of bias, while others just do a good job of advertising. We wanted to find out who's actually getting it right.
Okay. Well, how do you assess what is getting it right? Is it the overall demographic spread of a workplace or retention level? Do tell.
So we put a poll on Facebook. We asked women in workshops how they were choosing employers where they would be valued. The most common response that we heard, I Google it. So we Googled it.
Where am I going to be valued? What does that mean? Because you're a woman? I mean, either you have the job skills or you don't. Either you're qualified for a position or you're not. If you have any evidence or any notion that you're being denied employment on the basis of your gender, there are laws for that. There are ways you can pursue that. I don't understand. If someone is giving you a paycheck for the work that you're putting in, that is how you are valued. That doesn't mean that you should be somehow otherwise mistreated or abused in the workplace and just shut up and just take it because here's your paycheck. But what do you mean by being valued? You have to define that, because I don't know what that means. Because workplace to workplace, value is different depending on what you're doing. Anyway.
Specifically, we Googled best employers for women in tech.
Okay, well, that's a very, very narrow and specific category you're looking for. But, okay.
Our results showed 3 completely different lists. One business shows up as the top employer on one list, doesn't show up at all on another. Some lists offer no criteria, and some are purchased ads. They're paid for.
Wow, businesses paying for ads to try to recruit women. Like the initiative that you were part of proposing at the beginning of your talk? Maybe.
Employees and employers both want clear benchmarks that go beyond good intentions. The LEED certification gave businesses this clarity around environmental stewardship by outlining the exact steps they need to take for certification. We wanted businesses to have this kind of playbook for gender equity.
The LEED certification? I don't know what that is. Who came up with this certification? Who pays for it? What is the agenda there? I have no idea. I've never heard of it before. But gender equity. Gender equity. Not merit equity. Gender equity. All right.
So for our second act, we took what we had learned from testing these cultural levers. We partnered with the University of Washington and created the first standardized certification for gender equity in U.S. businesses.
You created a certification specifically geared towards giving preference to one gender over another in the workplace and in hiring. What was that again about eliminating bias?
Thank you. To create this standard, we had to learn what matters and what doesn't.
Like gender shouldn't matter. Gender should be irrelevant, male or female, short of a workplace or a job that for some reason requires it, like a sports team or you're hiring an actor to play a particular character or something like that. Gender shouldn't matter. Gender should be irrelevant to the hiring process. Either you have the skills or you don't. That kind of thing. Maybe.
We found out that what matters is not the total percentage of female employees.
Really? Because it sure sounded like earlier you were complaining about the fact that there were so few women in name your category. That sure sounded like something you said was a bad thing. Something that was a problem. So it's not a problem? Okay.
or the number of board members that are female. Those are what we call vanity metrics.
Really? You were talking about the lack of female executives earlier. Oh, but those are vanity metrics. Oh, okay. Well, I mean, I got to say, on that basis, I almost agree. Because if you're looking at only the gender demographics and not assessing the workplace or the employees on the basis of their performance and their skill set and so on, then sure, putting out those kind of numbers would be vanity sort of calculations. So, okay, I'm confused, but fascinated to see where this is going.
They can be bought, while the culture inside can still be out of balance. The factors that matter and that should be measured are under the surface. For example, even in organizations where equal percentages of women and men state that they've had access to a mentor, men's mentors are more likely to be in senior positions.
Well, I thought women in senior positions didn't matter. I thought that was a vanity statistic. So if it doesn't matter, wait. So women are being denied mentors in senior management positions? Why?
Reviewing our survey results, men were twice as likely to state they have been offered an opportunity to shadow someone in a senior role.
Okay. Why? Again, you're not giving us any more information. You're using the God of the gaps theory. Here's a statistic. I'm not going to tell you why the reason for this statistic is sexism, but it's sexism. Tell us why.
We're all used to hearing about the wage gap.
Yes, we are, unfortunately.
Hidden opportunity gaps like these are just as influential. So when assessing a company's culture, we measure these gaps between men's and women's experiences.
Yes, you measure the gaps, but do you look for the cause?
And the smaller the gap, the more equity-centered the culture. We also searched our findings for the tenets of workplace culture that are most important to men and most important to women. We learned that only 3 factors consistently matter to men, while 12 matter to women, and they only share one in common.
Are you trying to tell me that men have a more, I don't know, simplified or pragmatic set of requirements for earning a living? I think you inadvertently are showing off why there are so many differences in numbers, because men and women are different. They operate differently. They make different choices. They behave differently. This does not make one better than the other. It makes them different. And depending on the circumstances, that can show up in statistics, whether you want to blame it on sexism or not.
Topping the list for women, paid family leave, healthcare for dependents, and feeling that their ideas are heard and they're properly credited for them.
So women are most concerned with family and nurturing and feeling good. Okay, got it.
These are a few of the 188 indicators that determine whether or not an organization meets our quantitative standard for workplace equality.
Our quantitative standard. So women's quantitative standard? Do men's quantitative standard not matter? And are you going to show us what the top 3 things that men wanted are? Because I'm curious about that.
Based on the data that matter. These are the factors to create a culture of equity that lasts, not just for a month or for a quarter, but for years.
Do men's concerns not matter then? What were the top 3 concerns for men? why won't you I mean, if you're not going to why wouldn't you show the distance between concerns between men and women? Are you going to show us the 3 men categories?
So where does this leave us?
With an incomplete picture of what you're talking about.
Women in the workforce today are constantly told, you can be anything you want now. It's up to you.
Yes, because women, as you said earlier, are empowered. They're running businesses. They're making decisions. They're getting more degrees than men, more college degrees. So now you're going back on that?
Women of color, for whom the wage gap is even larger, have heard it.
Okay, well, aside from calling out white men at the beginning of this is the first mention of race elsewise. Well, I guess in that mock-up job interview or checklist, I guess that was there too.
The 2/3 of minimum wage workers who are women have heard it. Workers who don't identify as male or female and hide their identity at work have heard it. If they can hear, you can be anything you want now, it's up to you, I believe it's time for our businesses to hear it too. Eliminating workplace bias is a tall order, but we can't afford to let half our people go on being ignored. We've given businesses a framework for real change. Businesses can be anything they want now. It is up to them. Thank you.
Is it up to them? Because it sure sounds like you want it to be up to you. So at the top of this conversation, you outline the fact that you, the individual, made decisions in your example to not communicate with the people involved in your situation and to remain quiet when someone took credit for your own work. These were decisions you made on your own. No one forced you. And the fact that your subject, Howard, was actually on board with the idea, and you assume he was on board with the idea because it was told to him by a man, not that maybe Tom stole your idea and that was the first that Howard had heard of it because you never checked with Howard to see if he got your email. And then you remain quiet about that and let Tom take the credit. Okay, well, let's imagine for a second that your personal behavior is an extension of all women, which I don't believe for a second, but let's just say, if women are going to remain docile, if they're going to remain quiet in the process of things, then yes, men will succeed beyond them. But then, as we know, that's not how it works. But maybe that's how it works for you. I am very curious to know if perhaps, just perhaps, our speaker is projecting her own insecurities on the rest of the world, assuming that they're all like her, and therefore they all need help like she thinks she needs help for herself. Maybe. Because over the course of this presentation, she contradicted herself in multiple areas and wouldn't even tell us, like, I was honestly very curious to know, like, okay, well, women's 3 priorities are X, Y, and Z. What are men's priorities? How do they differ in focus or concern? Are they bad priorities? We don't know. Now, she did bring up Fortune magazine, but not the Fortune 500. Okay. She did bring up CEOs and executives and such, but not the Fortune 500. The wage gap was brought up. Did not cite specifically McKinsey research. She did Harvard Law Review, I think it was. What else was there? Oh, yeah, taking the idea from someone else, talking over women, etc. So I had a few in there. But I don't know how this quote-unquote eliminates gender bias, because you're instituting gender bias to solve a problem that you can't say with certainty is caused by gender bias. Again, you show us statistics of disparities and just assume we're going to fill in the gap with the answer of, oh, the cause is sexism. And the other thing that doesn't make any sense, the other thing that kind of undercuts her entire presentation was that first slide she showed us, where $8 billion has been spent on diversity training, and it's not working. Now, I'm assuming she's not doing her own work for free. So how does she imagine that she has come up with the way to solve the problem if $8 billion and decades worth of effort hasn't solved the problem? I don't understand. But then with most of these, I don't understand. So anyway, that's that for that. So I will now turn to the audience chat. If you have any questions, comments, observations, things I missed, things I misstated, I don't know. I'm scrolling up a bit here, and let's see. TC says, it's that not all women would, it's that all women could because of laws and culture. If you're talking about, being prevented from achieving things, it's like, it's still a choice. It's ultimately a choice to make the effort, to make the decisions. And, sometimes it's luck, falling into the right situation at the right time, or meeting the right coworker at the right time or something. Things happen, but you have to make the effort. Nothing for you here. I would point out that women of color tend to have more kids and take more family leave than women of not color, but I won't spew hate facts like that. Is that true? I don't know if that's true. Just like with her, if there's no specific citation or any information elsewise. But I can believe that women in general tend to lean more towards less full-time positions in order to spend more time raising and spending with the family. I can believe that because that is what we have seen over the course of history. Now, some of that culture is changing in the modern generations as fewer people have kids because of economic woes or other things. But generally speaking, and I know it's terrible to say it, the men go out and do the hard work. The women stay home and raise the kids. Not because they're required to, but because most people choose to. Ryan Rawlings, looking at her, she's a career woman who was probably good looking in college, couldn't sleep her way to the top, so she made her own company so she would be at the top and be able to look down on others. I don't know. I can't assume her motivations outside of what she's said. I take her at her word when she's talking about herself. Elsewise, I have no idea. And I did not research who this lady is or what she does. She didn't even tell us like the name of her organization or anything in the course of this, unless that was edited out or something. Let's see. Nothing for you here. I know plenty of men who would love to get paid time off work to help take care of their new baby, but she didn't mention that. Well, she didn't mention what the men's priorities were. Maybe paid time off was in there, but we don't know. She said that there was overlap, but we didn't see what it was. The one servant of Satania who wishes Minilad won, self-fulfilling prophecy. Let's put bias in effect so talking about gender bias makes sense. Yeah, fighting fire with fire. Oh, there's bias against women. And here's a company I worked in where nobody involved had a bias against hiring more women because Howard was all for it when presented, and Tom had no problem presenting it to Howard, and all the other department heads said okay. So everybody was on board except for Howard, who apparently was scatterbrained enough not to see the email or missed it or whatever. And our speaker didn't have it in her to ask him directly. But that business was not standing in the way of hiring more women, even though that initiative on its face could be construed as biased and potentially illegal, depending on how they went about it. Ryan Rawlings says, Scribelay should do a bingo card game for these streams. Maybe. It depends on the subject. It depends on what it is. I can't always predict, but a lot of these things, I've seen some patterns. That's all I could say about it. El Vaquero 555, Scribbles, I'll say it again. Men and women are different, and reaching for equity is harmful. Reciprocity between the sexes is a much more realistic goal. I just say put out the requirements. If they want to do some kind of like blind interview process in the first couple of filters of it, fine. I don't have a problem with that. Just put out the resumes. Here's the relevant skill set, experience, etc. Keep the names out, keep the age out, keep the gender out. I mean, unless those are relevant somehow to the job. And then as things filter up, sure. I don't have a problem with that. Things should start out at least on an egalitarian basis and then move upward. And eventually you have to meet the person and then see what their personality's like, etc. And this whole thing about, a bad personality. I cannot count how many people that I have seen interview for positions in my company who are ultimately rejected because of their bad personality. Oh, and also they were men. It doesn't matter. It's like either you're a fit or you're not. Skills alone is not necessarily a good employee. And the determination of whether or not someone's going to be a fit, at least in my experience, is not leaned or tilted towards one gender or another. It's tilted towards one individual or another on a case-by-case basis. But then maybe I'm just been lucky in the companies I've worked for. Let's see. Sarjim says, it really depends on who gets paid. It really depends on who gets paid more in the partnership. The one who makes less take more time off. Yeah. Who's footing the majority of the bill at home? Who has more obligations at work in order to maintain that revenue stream? Whether it's male or female, it's just that's just the way it's got to be. If you can take time off, take time off. Should the laws be changed to allow for more time off for families and things? I don't necessarily have a problem with it, so long as it's economically viable and everything. It's not doing more harm than good. But regardless, it should be afforded to both men and women, because families aren't just women. Parents aren't just women. Fairly Becca says, I work from home so that I can raise the kiddos. Hubby is active duty, works just fine for us. Yeah. I mean, now that might not work fine for some. Well, it doesn't have to. But that is a dynamic that has been, I hate to tell people, it has been a proven dynamic to work out for a lot of people. My father worked full time. He worked very hard. He worked very hard at a job that caused him to travel a lot, and he hates traveling, but he did it to earn a living, to provide for my mother, myself, and my sister. My mother raised my sister and I until we were of age that we could take care of ourselves, around like 12, 13, thereabouts. And then she went back to work and worked part-time to bring in more money to the family and help ease up the strain on my father a little bit and the family household altogether. And then from about 13 through when I moved out, 7 or 8 years later or whatever, that's how it was. My father worked full-time. My mother worked part-time. And that's just how it was. And eventually my mother went on to full-time work because she could. Things transition like that. Does it happen for everybody? No. Does it work for everybody? No. But if it does, why knock it? Has my mother done some disservice to the sisterhood by deciding to raise her kids and then gradually transition back to a full-time work schedule once the kids were old enough and raised well enough to care for themselves? I don't think so. Let's see. El Vaquero says, remove identification of biological sex from job applications, and you'll find that a lot of professions select males more often than women. Men and women are blatantly different. Well, like I say, in the first couple of filters of job application process, for whatever reaches the HR people or the hiring decision makers, sure, gray out the name, gray out the gender or whatever. Sure. Why not? Just focus specifically on skills. But at some point you're going to have to meet the person and make a decision. Now, can you know the motivations or decision-making process of an individual brain without it being put down on paper somewhere for to be called up for evidence later? No, you can't. But if you assume someone didn't pick you because of name your aspect without any evidence, that's on you. That's an accusation. And if you're going to accuse somebody of such a thing, you should have some evidence of it. But I don't have any problem with blind hiring practices in the first couple filters of the process. That's perfectly fine. Focus first on skills. because that's really what matters. Does the person have the relevant skills and experience? Yes or no? That's really the first tier decision-making process. After that, you meet the person, you get to know them a little bit, you find out, you sort of maybe throw some scenarios at them to see how they'd handle them and to determine whether or not this person would fit in the culture and the company or be a good fit in whatever department they're looking at. I mean, eventually you're going to have to know who you're talking to and who you're hiring. But in the first couple stages, sure, why not? Let's see. Asian Hippie says, I was a stay-at-home dad for 4 years. My other half went out to work. That's what Satsu and Squishy do. I mean, good for the goose, good for the gander. Whatever. It's not a sin for the wife or the female in the relationship, if you're not married, to be the main breadwinner. That's fine. I've seen that happen lots of times. The question is, well, no, I guess I was about to bring up a personal anecdote about a couple that I knew in the past, but that was a very specific circumstance. I'm going to keep that to myself. Straight Sith Male says, nothing wrong with meritocracy. Not in my book, as long as you adhere to it. Irate Prostate says, SSM. SSM? SSM. Single. I don't know what that means. I must have missed something. Let's see. Any other comments or questions, guys, before I move on? We'll move on by wrapping it up. I'm trying to keep these to about an hour long at most, so I'm not rambling on forever. And that anybody coming across them isn't immediately turned off by the possibility or the prospect of listening to nothing but me talking for more than a few minutes. But let's see. Straight Sith Male. Okay, sorry. I thought SSM was like something stream media that I didn't understand. There's plenty of abbreviations and acronyms out there. Acronyms are something else. Boy, there's my brain. It must still be waking up. Irate Process says, bring love to you in chat. Thank you, Irate. All right. Well then, guys, I'm going to wrap it up there because I think everything that I've had to say has been said. If you have anything else to say, of course, put in the comments below. Appreciate you guys coming out today. I had hoped to learn something, as I always do, from these presentations. But as far as I can tell, I didn't, because the lady wasn't here to educate us so much as to, I don't know, lecture us or promote her business by not naming it. Very bizarre presentation. I should be back maybe tomorrow, probably Monday. We'll see. But tomorrow, as a free plug, over on Tailed Features channel at 8 a.m. Pacific time, which would be 11 a.m. Eastern time, Tailed Feature and I will be going through our very first attempt at Tailed Feature, teaching me how to speak Gaelic. It should be an entertaining time. So because of what YouTube's doing lately with announcements and such, please keep an eye on Twitter. I'll be tweeting out the link tomorrow morning when I have it. Please also go over to Tailed Features channel and bookmark it, subscribe to it, like it, etc. I don't know if that will actually notify you when it happens, but it's a certainty you won't get notification at all if you're not subscribed over there. But yeah, everybody, thank you for coming out today. I do appreciate it. Everyone who donated, thank you so much for your generosity. I'm very, very grateful. Especially in these particularly crazy times. And I hope everyone has a good rest of their weekend. And again, please stay safe. Please stay safe and stay well. And if you're not well, please get well soon. Everybody have a good rest of your day, and I'll talk to you soon. Take care. Bye-bye.